This is an all-star panel. Big round of applause. Okay, here we go. Give it here.
Nope.
Give it here. Give it here.
Fuck you, I will not.
Give me that iPad.
That's a record. He's never said fuck you that fast.
Yeah.
And I've been on the panel with him for
I need
about
to
10
bring the
years.
swear jar.
Why not, dude?
I'm way more interesting with internet.
I just want to let folks know that represented here on this panel are four of the greatest forces in angel investing. This is amazing to have these four people on the stage at once collectively.
Kiss ass.
No, it's true. I mean, if you were to ask me, or if any startup came to me and said, who are the first 10 people I would talk to in angel investing, you guys would be in that list. And many of you right up there on the top. So, except for you, Dave, you'd be just on the bubble right there.
I took 10 golf first.
Please, guys, put that. It's unbelievable. Like, people were like, Jason, you had Dave McClure, you did a fireside chat with him, and it was a great fireside chat, by the way, but you had your iPad out the whole time. You cannot do that in the judging panel.
Interacting with the audience.
I understand that, but I'm not going to allow it during the judging panel. Okay, I'm going to let you have it now, but Daddy's taking the iPad during the judging panel. Okay, you've got 40 minutes of screen time, and then you're going to do 40 minutes of playtime. It's like,
Okay.
It's literally like my daughter. I have to negotiate the. But collectively, how many? I just want to go down. How many investments you've each made?
Well, we had a portfolio dinner recently, which kind of forced me to look at that, and 73 is the current count.
73 over 5 years or so of doing it.
8 years.
8 years.
Yeah.
Wow. Jeff.
137.
So now we're at about 200. Dave.
3, I think.
Up to 3,000. No.
300.
You've done a lot over a couple of different entities. What's the total you think?
North of 500 somewhere, but
Yeah,
like
500-600.
250 or 60 out of Fund 1, 200 out of Fund 2, and then 50
Some
out of
previously.
previous
Okay.
stuff.
So now we're up to 700 angel investments.
A lot. Maybe 5 of those might actually survive.
Right, there you go. Honestly, and Naval, I know you've done investments and then helped with investments, so give me both numbers, where you've been a critical part of raising the money and also where you actually invested it.
Sure. Helped about 2,000 companies raise money. Invested in about 70, and I'll really name and admit to 5.
Wait, what was the last one?
I'll name and admit to 5 investments.
Only 2,000? Come on.
Yeah, it's probably more, but it's hard to keep track.
Right, so anyway, just
5.
looking at that, this is a lot of firepower. What's the state of the market today? This has been the big debate. We've seen angel investing level up, level up, level up. People have bigger funds, and I think Jeff and Dave, you represent this sort of emerging, what was micro angels or super angels, and now is becoming micro VCs, and then now with a 50 million, and I think you have a 70 million fund?
55.
55 and...
You
you can't say, 'cause the SEC will arrest you as well.
Those are public domain.
But the SEC should just come up here and arrest us all, right?
Theoretically, if I said things, it's no longer illegal, but until the SEC clarifies their position, I'd like to...
The incompetence
not run
of
afoul
the
of the law.
SEC is staggering.
Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, hopefully that shit gets figured out in the next 6 months.
Okay, so let's answer the question. What is the state of affairs today? We hear about tons of companies.
State of the venture industry, angel,
Let's
or
talk
general
about
tech?
people raising their first round. Is it easier, harder? Is it flooded? Is it drying up? What's the state right now? And what should founders be thinking when they're going to raise that first round?
Bar has probably been raised for Series A, B, C because the overall quality is higher, and the number of VCs managing funds that do Series A is not larger.
And that would be referred to commonly as a Series A crunch.
Yeah, I generally think that's overplayed, and the state of the industry overall is much, much better than it was 5 or 10 years ago. And the fact that some companies might not be able to get capital from larger VCs is not necessarily a bad thing.
Why is that? Why is it not a bad thing?
Well, it depends on if you're talking about from the entrepreneur perspective or the state of the economy perspective. I think we are all much smarter than we were 10 years ago about investing in companies, about starting companies. Doesn't mean we won't fail, but we're not blowing 5 to 10 million on stupid shit as often as we used to. We're maybe blowing 50 to 500,000.
So
Exception
everyone-
being that there's lots of crazy shit going on at Series B and C, which is possibly unsustainable. And people are doing $50 to $100 million rounds that I think are occasionally questionable. But I actually think the state of the angel market and Series A market, which is often, worried about, is actually in great fucking shape, and people should stop worrying about that so fucking much. If you're an entrepreneur, yeah, it's more challenging to get a Series A round done because the quality of overall companies that are coming up for Series A is much higher. But that doesn't mean you can't find other sources of capital, and heaven forbid you actually have to run a profitable company for a little while.
Jeff, you're nodding your head. It's never been this strong, angel and up to Series A.
Yeah, I think I was joking with Sion that we're trying as hard as we can to keep our pace of 5 investments a quarter, and we've already done 6 in Q1, committed to 1 in Q2, and it's just ton of really interesting opportunities out there, some which are really sort of high beta, radical, every chance to fail, but if they don't fail, they will actually be something really interesting, and others which are just taking advantage of mobile, social, SaaS, whatever, and a bunch of really unsexy verticals which are still multi-tens of billions of dollars of total accessible market. And there's just like so many of those that we have a hard time almost not going from 5 to 10 deals a quarter. So I think I'm super enthusiastic about that, and we certainly are super active. The challenge, like they've said, is clearing the bar of the Series A is definitely harder because the overall quality of the funnel is very strong. So we have to just do a better job getting those companies up to that hurdle. That's all.
Simon, what are you seeing?
Well, we've definitely scaled back some of our investments because of this Series A hurdle. That's one of the things that we have had challenges with, where companies we invest in do not have VCs that are interested later on down the road to take the company to the next level. So we've scaled back quite a bit compared to previous years. Also, I just really feel like the market is oversaturated with a lot of products that are similar. And so it's really hard to pick out, necessarily who's the winner at this point when there's just so many people competing. Makes it pretty tough.
And so a wait and see approach might be wise as an investor.
Yes.
Let's see who actually gets to market. Let's see what the reaction is in the market.
Correct. And so we're doing a little more later stage funding with when companies have more traction or post-revenue. And like we were talking about backstage, we've also started changing our focus a bit and investing in non-sexy companies, infrastructure, things like I did a recent investment in Practice Fusion, so in the health space. So much more interested in that right now.
Interesting. Naval, when you hear these comments, how does it sync with what you're seeing in the data on AngelList? Because you have a very
it's
unique
born out of the data. I'd say the sophisticated in-market investors who traditionally have driven the majority of angel investments are probably about half as active today as they were over the last 2 years, which were quite frothy. So I think we've returned to probably at the level in the valuations and liquidity that it was in 2010, not back to the 06 to 09 days when it was still ramping up. I think it is probably a little further to go. Valuations are still coming down, which is healthy because they kind of got out of control for a little bit. And people are realizing that the gap in the market is the ability to write a $250K to $1 million check, lead a round in a company that already has some progress based on angel traction, but it's not yet ready for a Series A. And I think a lot of new funds are getting formed in that space. The problem with the angel market is it's very hard for it to be completely rational at all times because it's actually a very small market. And so a new entrant walking in can move it very easily. So a VC firm deciding to enter the market with a $100 million fund and deciding to be aggressive this year can move the market a lot. Or like a Google Ventures is putting $300 million a year to work, or just outside capital with a few hedge funds or European investors, what have you, decide this is a good place to park capital. So very much like Hollywood, where people sometimes come in for non-economic reasons, or there's always an inflow of capital from the outside. This market acts in weird ways and can be in unstable situations for long periods of time.
And that's even more exacerbated in international markets. I think Naval's comments are probably focused mostly on the US market, but a new entrant in the Indian market, the Brazil market, other places like that really dramatically affect.
We are seeing a lot more cross-pollination in AngelList. We are seeing a lot more geographic arbitrage where US or local Silicon Valley investors will look at companies outside of the valley, and especially non-US investors coming here.
Well, I mean, even at this event, I think 2/3 of the companies are non-Silicon Valley companies, and a full third are outside the United States, which is a record. In fact, they sent Tyler to to Sweden, Oslo, Slovenia, a bunch of places to work with those accelerators to bring the top 1 or 2 companies.
I've heard people tell me that 6.7 billion people don't live in the U.S.
But we do use 50% of the energy on the planet, so let's be...
Not soon. India and China are probably doing that.
So Naval, you have dabbled in a partnership with Second Market to do crowdfunding. I looked at I think maybe there were 10 deals I've seen come across. I picked the 3 that I thought were most interesting. Didn't meet with the founders. I just looked at the screenshots and I looked at the design quality and the idea, the one sentence, and I put $1,000 in the top 3. Is this a good idea?
Thank you for your donation.
What's that?
Thank you for your donation.
Is it a donation? So seriously, when an angel like me looks at it and says, I'm just going to make a crazy bet, that's sort of like me walking by the roulette table on the way to the poker room. I know I'm going to make money in the poker room, so I just put $500 on black and see if I can double it. Is that what I'm doing? Or is it's an intelligent process? Because it seems like you're pre-filtering these.
That's right. Those companies are heavily pre-filtered. So those are basically companies that already have a lead investor, have gotten most of their round done. It's an independent lead. It's usually a first round, and they want to put 20% of the round, which they could have already filled aside to build a larger group of supporters rather than have a smaller group of supporters. So those are very whitelisted and curated at the moment. And it's only for accredited investors. It's like an accredited crowdfunding is the way to think about it. We work with Second Market as a broker-dealer partner, although we'll probably be looking at adding more broker-dealer partners. The BD partners test the investors for sophistication and to give an idea of the risks and the portfolio theory behind it. And of course, they and we vet the companies.
How many companies and how many reached is it $150,000 hurdle?
It's actually a 100K minimum total threshold. To date, I think it's been about a dozen companies that have collectively through this mechanism raised about $6-7 million.
And of those 12, how many were actually able to do it? All
I
of
think
them?
all except one. And then one was unable to actually close and accept it all because they had a legal issue. So they got pulled.
What
It's the general solicitation stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
What-
see until those rules change.
And then just final question for you, Naval. What do you think of the crowdfunding stuff we're doing here and the SEC and non-accredited investors maybe participating in this? Obviously, you'll start allowing non-accredited on AngelList to participate if it becomes law, correct?
Correct. Once it's the law, I think the issue there is what are reliable and credible signals for the crowd to go on when they don't get to meet the company. So really what they're doing in that case, or what they should be doing, is following Cyan and Dave and Jeff into deals and not trying to do their own assessment based on screenshots of product. So there is a curation element there that's very important. And then in terms of dollar volume, I actually don't think it accounts for that much. It's kind of fun, but the reality is most of those investors are better off investing through fund vehicles. But just even the fund vehicles have not normally been available to them historically.
And what do you,
It's
what
like
do the angels
it's like the
think?
majority of the money on Wall Street goes through funds. It doesn't go through individual people picking stocks. So.
What are so anyway, what that means is I could invest in what Jeff invests in or Cyan invests in?
Yeah.
That might be a good investment.
Or you could just invest in Dave's fund,
Right.
if he was raising. Or he raising.
Oh, so you see a day coming where an individual could invest $1,000 of their $100,000 nest egg in a VC fund.
Unfortunately, it's more complex than that. There's all these different overlapping regulatory regimes. For example, it's very hard to take more than 100 investors into a fund when they're small. So there's all kinds of craziness that goes on. But we'll sort it out. We'll try and sort it out on the back end.
Jeff, would you ever consider this? Like if you could crowdfund the last $10 million of your fund and it was $1,000 at a time, you had 10,000 people who now were like, Softex, like street team, if you will, would you consider it?
Provided that, so if the regulatory environment allowed us to actually give them absolutely no information, because everything we disseminate to our LPs is extremely confidential. So when you know who you're sending information about your portfolio companies to, it's fine. I would be very nervous about the crowd. And typically what you try to do is so if you have a $55 million fund, you're going to get 40 or 45 of institutional money, so big, checks, and then you're going to go to your friends who are angels, and you're going to get 100 to 250K from them.